Shabbat Shalom, and this is 10 Minutes of Torah. Not the 9th day of Tevet, and not the 11th day of Tevet, but 10 Minutes of Torah. Now, I mentioned the month of Tevet, which is the month we are currently in, and the 9th and the 11th, because the truth is that Friday is the 10th of Tevet. 10 Minutes of Torah, 10th of Tevet. What is the 10th of Tevet? So the answer is that throughout the year, there are a number of days that we have a partial fast. And the partial fast that occurs is related to the destruction of the temple, of the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem. So what is actually the fast? It's called the fast of the 10th month. And so what exactly is the fast of the 10th month? What does it commemorate? And the answer is, like most of our fasts, it commemorates the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 586 BCE by the Babylonians. Now, the major commemoration of that event is, of course, Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av. And leading up to that, of course, we have Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th day of the month of Tammuz, where they are getting close. Within 3 weeks, the temple will be destroyed from the 17th of Tammuz. But what exactly happened on the 10th of Tevet? How does that figure into all of this? And the answer is that in order to capture a city in ancient times, you would lay siege to that city. And the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians began on the 10th of Tevet. You would surround it so that very little could get in or out. And eventually the people would end up surrendering because they needed food and water. Well, that is what the 10th of Tevet is, and it is like all of the other fast days that commemorate the destruction of the temple, except for Tisha B'Av, that is the 17th of Tammuz and the 10th of Tevet. They are what we call partial fast days, where you fast from sunrise until sunset, and the 10th of Tevet is always, and for those who keep these fasts, their favorite one, because it's so short, because it is at this time of year, of course, very little daylight. So that is on Friday, and what is quite interesting too is that unlike other fasts that would occur on Friday, this fast is not put off. What I mean by that is, should, for example, the fast of Esther, now that doesn't have to do with the destruction of the temple, but it's commemorating Esther's fast before she went to the king. We'll get to that when we get to Purim. But if that would occur on a Friday, it would be put off till Sunday, or actually sometimes it goes back to Thursday. And the same is true of Tisha B'Av. If Tisha B'Av will fall either on a Friday or on Shabbat, and it does fall on Shabbat actually fairly often, it is postponed. Not so for the 10th of Tevet. Whenever it occurs, that's when it's observed. It never occurs actually on Shabbat, so we don't have to worry about that, but it does occur, as it does this year, on Friday. Now, thinking about such fasts, I will tell you my own personal observance or lack thereof. We live at a time where we have a state of Israel, and those fasts commemorated the destruction of Jerusalem and the Beit HaMikdash and the loss of autonomy. And so my feeling is that the minor fasts that we used to observe, that those fasts, become optional, not Tisha B'Av. That was a whole different story, because that is the moment, and it's embedded into history until there is perhaps peace in the Middle East, and maybe even after that. But nevertheless, Tisha B'Av, in my feeling, is not optional. But these fasts are, because we have a Jewish state. The other thing I want to make mention of, every time I wear this necklace, especially when I'm wearing it with a coat, I almost feel like I'm a priest because you see kind of that kind of a look. But I feel it's important to have this necklace out all the time because the necklace represents, of course, the hostages, and they should always be in our mind even when they're not directly being spoken of. So that was a very long, almost actually more than half of our 10 minutes. And so I have to get to the Torah portion. And this week we're going to conclude the book of Breshit, the book of Genesis. The last Torah portion is Vayechi, and he lived. And just like Chaye Sarah, which came earlier, which means the life, Chai, of Sarah, it is actually about the end of her life, so too Vayechi is about the end, in particular, of Jacob's life, although the truth is that everybody of that generation, not Jacob, but his children, they too will, their lives come to an end because the book of Genesis is coming to an end, and, we'll see what happens with Exodus. So it starts out with Jacob now being quite old, and he is getting ready to die. And he makes Joseph take an oath that Jacob will not be buried in the land of Egypt, but brought back to their burial place in the land of Israel, in Hebron, to the cave of the Machpelah. Joseph brings his sons Ephraim and Manasseh to be blessed by Jacob, and Jacob puts his right hand on Ephraim the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh the older. It should be the other way around. Well, this is a theme we have throughout the book of Breshit, that is, the younger somehow usurping the older's position, or perhaps replacing the older, or perhaps saying that birth order is not so important. What's more important is what you do. Whatever it might be, Joseph realizes that Jacob has his right hand on Ephraim and it should be on Manasseh, but when he objects to this, Jacob says, no, I am doing this on purpose. They shall both be great peoples, and they shall both have tribes, but Ephraim will be the greater. And indeed, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, the ones who get lost, they do get lost. They get conquered by the Assyrians, actually, but 721 BCE, but that's a whole other story. So the main tribe is indeed Ephraim. After blessing Joseph's sons, Jacob then goes on to bless all of his sons, although it's hard to even call them blessings because really it's Jacob's vision about what will happen in the future. And some of it's good and some of it isn't. The vision is based on the characteristics and special gifts of each of his children. But it's poetry, so, it's kind of clouded in that language and difficult to understand. Now, I mentioned that this idea of blessing Joseph's children is continues the thought that the firstborn, that's not something that we take into consideration throughout the book of Genesis. But interestingly, even though Jacob has reversed his hands, the Torah actually says the following. And this is in chapter 48, verse 15 and 16. And he blessed Joseph, saying, the God in whose ways my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, bless the lads, Ephraim and Manasseh. In them may my name be recalled. So the question here is, why does he say, or why does the Torah say, rather, and he blessed Joseph when it's Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons, who are getting blessed? Well, there's a beautiful comment by the Zohar, which is the book of Jewish mysticism. And it says something that you don't need a mystic to understand. The Zohar says, one blesses people by blessing their children. Well, the entire book of Genesis, of Breshit, in many ways is a lengthy tale of families and their trials and tribulations. But it's also filled with the blessings given to our ancestors. That's the first blessing of Abraham. Those who bless you will be blessed. And so, as the Zohar notes, there is not a single family that does not have challenges. But perhaps the greatest blessing, the purest blessing, is to see our children and our grandchildren grow and prosper, both material and, of course, perhaps more importantly, spiritually. Perhaps that is what Jacob meant when he blessed Ephraim and Manasseh in Joseph's names. May we all be blessed by our children and grandchildren and all who come after us. Well, this has been 10 Minutes of Torah, not the 9th day of Tevet, not the 11th day of Tevet, but 10 Minutes of Torah and the 10th of Tevet. Shabbat Shalom.